Good day to everyone. I am Eileen Estreba. I am one of the reporter from Group 2, and our topic for today is the labor market context of human resource management. The purpose of this chapter is to provide an assessment of the contemporary labor market context of human resource and the impact of current trends in labor supply and demand on the practices associated with human resource. So, let's proceed. What is labor market? A labor market can be understood as the mechanism through which human labor is bought and sold as the commodity and the means by which labor demand. The number and the type of available jobs is matched with labor supply, the number and the types of available workers. As such, the labor market constitutes the systematic relationship that exists between workers and worker organization. The next is the internal labor market. The internal labor market refers to that which exists within a single organization and represents its internal supply or stock of a labor. In its broadest sense, the internal labor market is existing mechanism by which existing employees are attributed particularly rules within a firm. The specific characteristic of an organization internal labor market that are reflective of a number of HR policies, emphasis. The example of this is the level of investment, employee training and development, the availability of career development opportunities, and the extent to which employee retention and job security are prioritized. Contextual factors, particularly the types of skills, knowledge, and attributes required, also act to shape the types of internal labor market that exist within a firm, depending on its characteristic. An internal labor market can fulfill a number of functions for an organization. For example, this is in seeking to retain employees, the internal labor market can act as a source of motivation and contribute to a positive psychological contract through the provision of training and development career opportunities and good terms and conditions of employment. The operation of the internal labor market can also be understood as a device for managerial control through a process of stratification, division, and the detailed allocation of roles and responsibilities. Next is the external labor market. In the context of the specific firm, the external labor market represents its external supply or available stock of labor, both the types of labor that the firm requires and the potential pool of workers available are determined by the industry sector in which the organization operates, its central activities, its location, size, and scope, and its competitive and HR strategies. In reality, as a labor is not a homogeneous commodity, the external labor market can be understood as a multitude of individual labor markets. For example, a firm's external labor market can be local, regional, national, or international, and many larger organizations will operate in all these depending on the type of labor sought and its relative scarcity. For example, a multinational corporation seeking to recruit a senior executive will most likely look to recruit internationally in order to provide themselves with the widest possible pool of applicants, given the skills, knowledge, and experience for such a position are likely to be relatively scarce, and such workers are often highly mobile. The unemployment and underemployment. It is important to acknowledge that unemployed labor represents an integral element of the external labor market. People that are out of work but actively seeking employment, particularly those unemployed over a long period, tell us a great deal about the operation of the labor market. The unemployed or surplus labor in any given market plays a role in determining the cost of employed labor, the terms under which it is engaged, and the extent of industrial conflict. For example, where there is a large surplus of labor, then this will result in a greater competition for jobs, a downward pressure on wage and condition, and a lowered like likelihood of employees rocking the boat. There are a number of types of unemployment. First is structural unemployment. The structural unemployment exists where there is a fundamental mismatch between the supply and the demand for labor. For example, where demand for particularly types of skills is low, those in possession of these skills are at relatively greater risk of being out of work. Second is the cyclical unemployment. The cyclical unemployment is the component of overall unemployment that results directly from cycles of economic upturn and downturn. For example, in times of recession, the demand of labor in generally falls and unemployment rises. Therefore, being out of work it is not necessarily associated with one's long-term employability, rather it is linked to a short-term decline in overall demand for labor. Lastly, the fractional unemployment. The fractional unemployment is a form of unemployment reflecting the gap between someone voluntarily leaving a job and finding another job. As such, it is sometimes called search unemployment, though it is also include gaps in employment when transferring from one job to another. For example, a worker might be unemployed whilst looking for a particularly type of job but is yet to identify an appropriate existing vacancy. Therefore, even where supply broadly meet the demand for labor, unemployment temporarily persists.
Good day, everyone. I am Christy Jaramillo, and today I am going to talk about the third and fourth topics that were assigned to me, which are to identify the changing labor market conditions under which contemporary organizations operate and to evaluate the implications for human resources management in the knowledge economy. So let's get started. Labor market change. The composition of both the labor supply, the availability of labor in general and of specific types of workers, and the demand for labor. The amount and type of labor sought by employers is influenced by a wide range of factors. Table 4.1 details a number of factors that impact on the supply and the demand for labor. From Table 4.1, it is clear that the labor market is shaped by a range of processes that can be both planned, such as government policy, or largely uncontrolled and unpredictable, such as shifting social attitudes. It is important to note that some elements occur on both sides of the table, stressing the reflexive relationship between the supply and demand for labor. For example, if the government alters the supply of particular types of labor to the market through education and training policies, firms will change their demand strategies to accommodate, take advantage of, or neutralize the impact of this changed supply. Changes in the labor market. The composition of both the labor supply, the availability of labor in the market, and the labor demand. The demand for labor in the market, general and of certain types of workers, and the demand for labor, the number of people who want to work. A variety of factors determine the amount and type of labor desired by companies. A variety of variables. Table 4.1 lists a number of factors that influence the outcome. The labor market supply and demand. Table 4.1 shows how a variety of factors influence the labor market. Processes that can be planned, like for example, government policy or unplanned, natural disasters, changing society attitudes, for example, are uncontrollable and unexpected. It is true, it is worth noting that some items can be found on both sides of the table, highlighting the reciprocal relationship between supply and demand labor. For example, if the government modifies the supply of a specific commodity, types of labor to the market through policies on education and training. To accommodate, businesses will adjust their demand strategy to reduce or eliminate the impact of the change supply. As you can see in the table 4.1, there are two factors that shape the external labor market: labor market supply and labor market demand. I can't read it all since our time is limited, so I will have to summarize it all. But keep in mind that this is the most significant aspect of our topic, so please take note of this. HR professionals may play a key part in the development of their company's strategy. You can make a difference in two areas: employee resourcing and job design. Labor supply fluctuations can affect a company's underlying growth rate, productivity, and living standards. The interconnectedness of national and regional labor markets has increased as a result of globalization. Access to a global labor market opens up the possibility of cost savings, as well as access to a more diverse labor supply. Firms, on the other hand, are confronted with the difficulty of managing a worldwide workforce. The fourth topic is about to critically evaluate the implications for HRM of the knowledge economy. With the rise of the service economy, the rise of the number of the knowledge workers, the increasingly rapid flow of the global information, and the growing recognition of the importance of the intellectual capital and intellectual property rights. Knowledge is increasingly claimed to be a key critical resource and source of competitive advantage in the modern global economy. Knowledge, with its intangible features, is increasingly becoming a distinguishing feature of economic activity as opposed to tangibles like goods, services, or manufacturing processes. The knowledge economy has seen an explosion of information and communication technology, as well as increased organizational complexity, the expansion of virtual and global companies, and rapid change. This in turn necessitates a significant shift in HRM to meet the evolving demands of the information economy. And that would be the third and fourth topic for this day. Thank you for listening.
To outline how labor market trends are impacting how organizations utilize labor and how HRM practices are driving labor market change. Simultaneously, with social economic transformation, management of the human factor in the world of labor has become increasingly important. People as resources are essential for the effective management of every company. The changing environment requires rational management of resources. The impact of changes within the labor market observed in our time is the strongest of the field of human resource management. The importance of effective workforce management has increased considerably, which raised the significance of human resource professionals and their activities and demanded a certain change in attitude. The impact of globalization and the lack of workforce and the talent also affected the development of HR functions. Besides so-called conventional functions appearing in every organization irrespective of its organizational size and activity. New areas of activity have been constantly emerging over the past decades, responding to changes in macro and micro environment. In our present study, we highlight the characteristics and significance of HR branding, retention, knowledge, competence, talent, and flow management from amongst the new trends. to outline the various ways that firms can respond to develop to different labor market conditions. Labor market flexibility refers to how quickly a firm responds to changing conditions in the market by making modifications to its workforce. A flexible labor market allows employers to make changes in response to supply and demand issues, the economic cycle, and other market conditions. Factor impacting labor market flexibility: employee skills and training, minimum wage regulations, and job-related information can all have an impact on flexibility in the labor market. Labor unions, also called trade unions. These organizations represent the collective interest of a group of workers. Employees can band together through their union to initiate negotiations for better wages, working conditions, benefits, and working hours, making the market less flexible. Employee skills and training. When employees are skilled and have ready access to training to improve on or add to their skills, they are better able to respond to changes in the market. For example, a customer service representative who goes back to school to get training in the information technology or IT sector is able to respond to the growing demand for IT technicians when vacancies arise. Minimum wages, state and federal regulations limit how low employers can set the base pay per hour for employees. These minimums are based on changes in the cost of living and inflation. Once some employers feel higher minimum wages cut into their productivity as well as their bottom lines. Job-related information. People rely on the information provided by employers about the job available in the market. The more informed job seekers are about open positions, the easier it is for employers to respond to fluctuating conditions within a company's workforce and in the market, making it much more flexible. What are the ways to make labor markets more flexible? Ways to make labor markets more flexible include reducing or abolishing the minimum wage, reducing the power of labor unions, providing education skills training to workers to improve mobility, making it easier to lay off workers, removing labor protection laws, and reducing unemployment.
And here we are in the last part of our objectives, where we're talking about the notion of organizational flexibility and how various forms of flexible working practices impact on both employers and employees. As markets become more unpredictable and dynamic, then firms must respond in a commensurate fashion by increasing the flexibility of both their organization form and workforce. It has become received wisdom that rigid bureaucratic forms of organization, characterized by vertical hierarchies of authority, centralization of control, and task specialization, are not adaptable or responsive enough to cope with the demands of 21st century capitalism. Using autonomous work groups or flexible projects, teams associated with the unstructured approaches to management associated with the effective deployment of knowledge workers. Davenport et al. 1996. To replace tight managerial control and strict demarcation between tasks or work. Flexible working can take an almost infinite variety of forms. If you are simply changing the times you work, your salary should not be affected. But if you are working reduced hours, you will obviously be earning less. As a result, your employer's pension contributions will also reduce, and any bonus is likely to be prorated. You will also accrue less paid holiday. These changes have brought the issue of reconciliation between work and care commitments to the fore. Flexible working arrangements in firms have been identified as one important means of balancing work and other commitments. Evans 2001. Inevitably, changes in organizational structure have profound implications for workers in terms of job content, employee motivation, job security, and organizational commitment, especially given the evidence that employers have often used the flexibility rationale for reorganization to justify redundancies. Child and McGrath 2001. Grimshaw et al. 2002 note that theoretically, at least in flatter, non-hierarchical network organizations, workers have greater autonomy, often work together in teams, and are able to adapt more quickly to change. However, one apparent contradiction in this process restructuring is that the layering. For example, the removal of hierarchical level of management tends to undermine the linkage between training and career advancement.